Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm McKenna. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas. I'm excited tonight to be joined by Nicole Baart and Kimberly Belle. We're going to be talking about Nicole's new book. We have signed book plates available for it. As always, I am putting a link in the comments here on Facebook and the live chat on YouTube for more information about either author or to order their books. You can just click that link. I also want to talk about something that we do every year around this time. We take part in the Evelyn Swerzinski book drive, which benefits the Children's Hospital of LA's literary healing program. Evie was the daughter of a beloved crime writer, Dwayne Swerzinski. And once she unfortunately passed away a few years ago, they started this program in her honor to get books to those children who, are in the hospital system. So we take part in this book drive. I will put information about the book drive as well as our specific website. If you're interested in ordering books, all you have to do is order them through us, choose local pickup, and we arrange to get all the books to LA. They have a goal of 2,500 books this year, and I think we're well on the way to that. Also, if you don't know what books you want to buy for the book drive, but you want to participate, you can also order a gift card and ask us to put that value towards books for the book drive. We can't take gently used books because some of the children are immunocompromised. So it does have to be donations of new books. But if you want to drop off brand new books or buy them from us and you're local, you can obviously do that as well. So I'll put that information in the links in the comments shortly. Now, for the reason that we're here this evening, Nicole Baart has a new book. Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Congratulations on your new book, Everything We Didn't Say. Let me go ahead and do your official bio, and then we will bring on our guest moderator, Kimberly. And so Nicole Baart is the mother of 5 children from 4 different countries, the co-founder of a nonprofit organization, One Body, One Hope. She lives in a small town in Iowa. She's the author of 9 previous novels, including You Were Always Mine, Little Broken Things, and The Beautiful Daughters. And as I already mentioned, we do have signed book plates. So if you are inclined to order the book from us, we'll make sure one of those signed book plates gets in the order. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you. I see your sweet puppy in the background, and I love it.
I'm sorry.
That's great.
She is at least quiet.
It's wonderful.
Being in the couch to try to get comfortable right now. So, yeah, she's here and making herself known. We're also joined by Kimberly Belle, who I always say are my favorite people on these talks are our guest moderators, interviewers, because you make it an easy evening for me. So thank you for being here, especially for being here at 1 a.m. in Amsterdam. That's quite the commitment. So it's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Of course. So I'm going to do your bio as well. So Kimberly Belle is the USA Today and internationally best-selling author of 5 novels of suspense. Her third, The Marriage Lie, was a semifinalist in the 2017 Goodreads Choice Awards for Best Mystery and Thriller and has been translated into a dozen languages. Before turning to fiction, Kimberly worked in marketing and nonprofit fundraising. We've got some people chiming in from Texas, Iowa, Alabama, people super excited to be here in the comments. Remember, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Put your questions in the comments on Facebook, the live chat on YouTube. We'll get to them in a little bit. For now, my dog is knocking pillows off the couch. For now, I'm going to go away, wrangle her, and leave you to chat. Just call me back on when you're ready. Have fun.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay, so I have a copy of your book right here. Ooh, Everything We Didn't Say. It's been out for what, a whole day?
Yeah, like one day.
But you've been getting a lot of buzz for this. I know it was the Book of the Month pick, which is a huge, big deal. It was a Goodreads Biggest Mystery and Thriller for the rest of the year pick. Crime Read's Most Anticipated Book. I mean, you've been getting a lot of nice buzz. That must feel amazing.
Yeah, it is actually a lot of fun. You put so much work into your blood, sweat, and tears and so many hours, and you just want it to connect with people and
Yeah.
let
Yeah.
it in. So,
I love it. All right. So tell us in your words what the book is about.
yeah, it's the story of Juniper Baker. She's a special archives librarian in Denver, Colorado, and she's returning home to her Iowa small town, ostensibly to help an old friend, but really she's there to solve a double homicide that happened 15 years ago, and she really hopes to win back the daughter she left behind.
I loved it. I loved it. So you just kind of talked about, Juniper returning home, and that's kind of how the story opens, right? She's pulling back up into her hometown, and we learn that she's been running from this past, these murders, and her iffy relationship with her daughter, and that's going to be a big part of the story. So was this your beginning from the very beginning when you first sat down to write it? I mean, did you know that that's where the story was going to open and where you were going to take the story? Or is that something that you had to, drill down a bunch of revision times to get to?
Kimberly, you have a lot of books too, and I really believed that this is my 10th, that by my 10th book, I had it all figured out and it would be so easy, and it's harder. I think the 10th one was harder than the first in some ways, because I don't know, it was just so difficult. But I rewrote it 3 different times from the ground up over the course of almost 3 years. So I'm not even sure where that first manuscript is, and I don't know, I don't even know where it began, but it's been a journey to get to where we are.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? Because I totally agree with that. I think the books get more difficult to write. I think part of it is because every story is different, but also because you know better what's crap.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have much higher standards for myself.
Yeah, totally agree. So I love how this story alternates between the present and the past. And so I wanted to kind of ask about your process with that. I know you said you wrote it a bunch of different times, but do you write those stories first one and then the other and then thread them together? Or did you kind of write the book chronologically and bounce back and forth?
That's a great question. The original version of the book did not have the past and present chapters. I was going to focus entirely on Juniper as a 30-year-old grown-up woman and have her remember her past in conversations and flashbacks and different ways. But I fell completely in love with 19-year-old Juniper and loved her story and loved writing about her, first romance, graduating from high school. And I was just having so much fun with that aspect of the story that I started to write those chapters, and they were fun for me to write.
Yeah.
And then I tried to, I want so desperately for the story to have continuity from the beginning to the end. So if you read closely, every chapter of Juniper in the present day ties into the chapter of her as a 19-year-old after that. Like there's some sort of a theme, there's something going on that ties into both chapters, and I hope pulls the whole story together.
Yeah. And like the chapters that go back and forth like that, it always makes it for such an exciting read, speaking as a reader, because you just like zip along. And like you said, every chapter, even though they were taking place all these years apart, they fit together really well. So it made for a fun read.
It's fun to write that way too. It was great. And yeah, the present day chapters are winter and the past is summer, and so we had different things going on. So we kept
Right. Yeah. And the podcast element, because that was a big part of the story too. I love that. Now, where did that come from? Was that something that you knew going in as well, or?
You know what? That was a real last minute addition. Thanks to my editor. We needed, I'm a complete true crime podcast junkie. I love listening to them, and it's what I do when I clean every Friday. I listen to my true crime podcasts, and we just needed a little reason for her to, like, why now? Why 15 years later does she decide that this is the time? And we thought, oh, let's do a podcast. What if this is going to all come out and somebody's trying to figure out who the killer is, and she needs to step in and figure it out first.
Right. So was your research around podcasts, was that just because you're a fan and you listen to them, or did you do actual research into how it works, or?
I did actually. I have a couple of friends right now who are starting podcasts of their own, and it was just really fun to sit down with them and hear their process and how they get, I don't even know what they're called anymore, the production, the people who produce it, and how they get music. And yeah, it was fun to learn all of that.
Yeah, yeah, that's fun. That was an interesting element, and it made it very current, the story very current, you know? So, um, so Juniper is a mother, as I know you are. How much did your experience dictate her story?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have 4 teenagers right now.
Oh my God, bless your heart.
I love them so much. Yeah, but parenting teenagers is not for the faint of heart. And
Mm-mm.
I also have a dear friend who years ago got pregnant when she was very young and let her mom and dad raise her daughter because she didn't feel like she was in any position to be able to do that herself. And years later came into her daughter's life and has a wonderful relationship with her, and it kind of became her mother again. And I a lot of my books deal with motherhood and what that means. And
Mhm.
my kids, some are biological, some are adopted. I was a teacher for many years, so I felt like a mother figure to the kids that I taught. I still keep in touch with some of them and consider them, yeah, kind of part of my family in a way. And the concept of motherhood and how it works and what makes a mother is something that I love to explore with my books. So
Mhm. Yeah. And that was a big part of this story, right? The relationship between her and her daughter and everything that um that had happened, and all the maybe I guess misunderstandings too between them, and how they figure those things out.
yeah, and I think her and her mother too, Juniper and her mom, Rev, had a
Right.
very fraught relationship. And yeah, she probably didn't have the best role model to know how to be a good mother. I think
Hmm.
I think one of the best mother figures in the book is Cora, the librarian, who kind of
Yeah.
takes Juniper under her wing and becomes a mother figure to her. So,
Right. Right. Yeah, that was a great character. Where did she come from?
oh, she's so fun. Um, I don't mean to do this, but I tend to put my grandmothers in my books over and over
Oh,
again. Oh, my maternal grandma and my paternal grandma were such a huge part of my life. In fact, my dad's mom, when my grandfather passed away, I kind of became a companion to her, I guess. So on the weekends, I would move into her house and we would sleep in the same bed, and we'd bake together and we'd cook. And I just love her so much, and she taught me so much. And both of my grandmothers have been gone for several years now. And this is one of the ways that I get to kind of keep them in my life, I guess. I like to write about them and put older women in my books.
I love that. And you know what? I think sometimes, as when I'm writing, the most fun characters that the ones that speak loudest to me are some of the secondary characters. I mean, your main characters are a big part of the story, and you have to have this, affinity kind of relationship with them. But don't you think secondary characters sometimes steal the show and maybe even your heart when you're writing them?
Absolutely. My favorite secondary character in this book is India. I She has such a small role. I mean, she comes up maybe 2 or 3 times, but I love her. I think she's so fascinating. And it wasn't until after I had written her that I met somebody a lot like her. And like, I want to be friends with you because you remind me so much of this character that I created.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, those are the ones that really speak loud in my ear when I'm writing. So do you have that? Do you have characters that actually talk to you when you're writing a book, or when you're thinking about them? Do you hear them in your ear?
Yeah, I know that that's probably kind of weird. Actually, dreams, I dream a lot about my characters. So there are
Oh.
times that, yeah, I'll wake up in the morning and I have a scene figured out. Or I say that everything we didn't say is book soup because there were so many different things that came into the creation of this book. But one of my earliest inklings that I wanted to write this book is I woke up one morning and I had this brother sister relationship kind of in my head, and Juniper and Jonathan, like brother and sister, almost twins. They
Mhm.
are less than a year apart. So, and I had dreamt that. So that's where their relationship came from, and I just kind of mined it from there.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wish I could remember my dreams. I never remember them. But I did read a Guardian article that talks about, I'm looking for it because I had it on my notes here. Um, talks about how a majority of authors actually hear their characters' voices in their head. So we are not strange that we
Okay,
actually get we're not out of the ordinary.
I think maybe non-writers might think that we're a little crazy, but that's okay. We're all right with that.
Exactly. So you talked about how this book took you 3 years to write. Is that a typical thing for you? Do books take you that long?
I am usually a very fast writer. I can, even in a couple of months, get one down, but I conceptualize for about a year before I start writing. It takes me, roughly a year, but usually
Mhm.
to get my first draft done. But I just struggled with this one. I know that you know this too. Writing mystery is really hard.
So hard.
I've written contemporary fiction before this, which is hard in its own way. But when
Mhm.
you're trying to put together a mystery, you have to have red herrings, you have to have perfect foreshadowing, you have to have if you're going to have a twist, it has to make sense. And by the time you get to the end, readers have to be able to say, "Oh my goodness, all
Yeah.
the clues were there," and that's just such a complicated thing to do. And I don't know, it was during COVID, so I don't think I had the headspace for that, and
Yeah.
it was tough.
Yeah, and some books are more difficult than others. That doesn't mean that they're better or worse or anything. It's just that every story is different, and sometimes they come out really quick and easy, and sometimes there's just some, I don't know, sometimes a block even in your head, and you can't figure it out. And then once you figure it out, you're like, of course, that's what I was trying to say.
Exactly. Well, the first version of this book, the twist at the end, the murderer was not who it is right now.
Oh,
And
really?
I wrote the entire book that way. And it wasn't until I typed this book out, and usually I have to write longhand. I need pen, I need paper.
Stop. Really? The
Yeah,
whole book?
pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I I finally threw them away, but I will go buy a 5 pack of yellow legal pads and a bunch of pens, and it takes me about 5 legal pads. And by the time I've gone through all of them, I know that I'm kind of close to the end of the story. And we just redid our German bathroom, my husband and I found all of these stacks of old notebooks that have all my books written in them. What do I do with these? So I threw them away.
No.
Room for that.
So if you're writing these notepad things, so 5 is a book-ish. So is that like, are you really just writing the story, or are you doing an outline, or is it kind of a combination? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's the book, or that's how I start. So I begin every writing session by turning off all of my screens. Like I get rid of my phone, I get rid of my computer. We have a room in the back of our house that has a door that shuts on it. It's kind of a living room that's separate from the rest of the house. And I shut myself in there with my pen and paper, and I'm not allowed to take it out until I've gone through several pages. And I almost I don't know, there comes a point where I'm not thinking about what I'm writing anymore. I'm just in the story. And I
Yeah.
find when I'm typing on a computer, I get too distracted. A notification comes up and all of a sudden I'm on Facebook, or I don't like what I wrote, so I delete, 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 delete. You can't do that with a pen and paper. Like there are times when I'll scratch out and keep going, but I don't know, there's just something really fluid about being able to write that way. So I'll do that for a while. And then when I reach kind of a point where I feel like this is good, I'm happy with what I did, I'll take the notebook and then go type it into my computer. And sometimes I can keep going from there and it works. And other times I can't. And then I go back to the notebook again.
That's funny. That's so interesting because I'm not a pen and paper kind of gal, but when I do get stuck in a scene, when it's just like I'm writing and writing, it's going round and round, I can't figure out where it's going, I actually do that. I'll close down my file and I'll pick up a paper, and it's not really even that I'm writing it. I'm just like working it out on pen and paper. So there is something about that visual, being able to see the story.
There is, and brain science supports that. kind of interested in brain science. I don't know why, but I like reading these things. And it's true that when you take out a pen and a piece of paper, it accesses a completely different part of your brain and allows you to tap into something totally different than typing does. So yeah, it works
That's
for me.
fascinating. So, but normally, how long does a book take you to write?
Oh, yeah, roughly a year, I guess. If I
Yeah.
really want to, like, I've locked myself in a hotel room, much like I'm in right now, and hammered out 30,000 words in a weekend. I've done it twice. I really needed to make deadline, so I locked myself away and I like ordered takeout and didn't leave. It's kind of a bad situation, but I got it done. But I like to go slower than that.
Yeah.
If I had my way every day, about 1,000 words, and I don't know what that works out to, but a couple, like 3 or 4 months, and then lots of time to go over it and edit and yeah, give it to beta
That's
readers.
me too. I'm slow and steady. I like 1,000. 1,000 feels really comfortable for me. I can get to 2,000 if I really push myself, but then I'm brain dead for the rest of the day.
I know it's exhausting, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's crazy. Yeah. Do you like to write in the morning? Are you a morning writer? Are you an evening writer? Like, what's your process?
I get off school, and then once they're out the door, I give myself 3 hours. I really can't go for more than that. So 8 to 11, 9 to noon, something like that. And by the time I hit lunchtime, I have to be done because yeah, we have dentist appointments and doctor appointments
Oh
and
my gosh.
practices and food and yeah, you name it. So
That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. I like a longer stretch than that. I'm amazed that you can get a whole book written with 3-hour stretches.
do what you have
Um,
to.
sorry?
You do what you have to
Yeah, right. Yeah.
do, right?
So, you brought up before like these crazy twists, the twists, and I've written a bunch of suspense thrillery kind of novels, and it seems like readers are getting smarter and smarter, and so it makes our job so much harder, don't you think?
So hard. Yeah.
Like how do you deal with the pressure of coming up with these twists? How do you even think of it? You said that in this book, your villain changed, right? At the end?
Yeah, this was kind of a happy accident for me, to be perfectly honest, because it just made so much sense, and I don't even know why I didn't see it in the beginning. So my passion when I'm writing a book is not so much the who and the what and the where, it's the why. Why did
Yeah.
this person do this thing? And I I love exploring that. So the characterization means a lot to me. And by the time I got to the end of this book, it was just so obvious who would do it and why they would do it. And I hadn't even seen it myself. So a little bit of a happy accident. I hope it happens again. I don't know. I guess I just kind of let the story tell itself, and that's where we ended up.
Yeah. But doesn't that scare you though? Like letting the story tell itself? Aren't you afraid that you're going to write yourself into corners and
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's probably why I rewrote this book 3 times.
so,
You know, I've decided that I definitely have to, if I'm going to be writing more mystery, suspense, thriller, that I need to have a much more intentional outline, and I need to know what all the beats are and when things are happening. And I used to write just kind of the seat of my pants, and I don't think you can write mystery that way. I would love to meet somebody who could, because their brain is far more brilliant than mine is.
right? Yes, I actually know a couple, and I'm like, are you the Rain Man? Because how do you keep all that in your head? Like, there's so many moving parts and
Yeah.
pieces, and I write from an outline, and it pretty much stays the same. Although things shuffle around sometimes, and occasionally a character will walk in that I don't have in my outline, but really, like my beginning, my beats, like you said, they all stay the same. But
That's impressive. Do you have a method that you follow, or is it your own thing?
it's kind of a combination of bunch of different methods and like the save the cat kind of stuff. I incorporate the parts of it I like in there.
Good
Yeah.
stuff there. I like that too.
Yeah. How about you? Do you use a specific?
It's an amalgamation. I really believe I'm ashamed of this, but I thought that by the time I reached my 10th book, I had it all figured out. And when I realized that I didn't, I love learning. And throughout my entire career, I've constantly been, going to conferences and conventions and meeting with other authors and hearing what they do and reading all the books. And I don't know, I was busy. So I have a lot of kids. I took a bit of a break from doing that, I guess. And I have definitely revisited that. So I just bought a stack of books and poured through all and started reading. And I think we constantly have to be refining our craft and better and better and better with every book, or there isn't space in the market anymore. So
I agree. And so what made you make the switch to, writing thrillery mystery kind of stories? Like, was it this particular story, or did you think I want to try a different genre?
So this is what I'm reading and what I'm loving. I don't know. I found myself gravitating towards these kinds of books, and I get so much pleasure out of figuring out, the why. The is always the why. And I was writing contemporary and enjoying that, loving it. But at night, the book that I would pick up was this. So yeah, I guess I just thought, I wonder if I can do that, and all with it. It's so fun.
Yeah, I love it. But I think it goes back to what you said before about, constantly learning and refining, and, you don't want to write the same book over and over, right? You want to do something different and something fun, and it has to stay fun for us too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And this isn't the only genre that I want to write. Like I actually have a book into my agent right now that's a middle grade novel, because I have kids and and I love reading to them, and it's just so much fun to see what connects with them. And I'd love to write fantasy someday, and I'd love to write a historical about my grandmother, of course. So I don't know. I don't know if I'll be allowed to, they kind of like you to write what you know and write what you've already been writing. But
Yeah.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah. They like to keep you in your lane, right?
Which makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
We're loyal and like what you're doing. You don't want to get rid of that audience. Right?
Fantasy seems really hard to me though, like all the world building and stuff.
Yeah. So I built my fantasy world when I was 16. So I would revisit that. Like I started writing that when I was a teenager, and I still love it. And I'm still passionate about it and would love to write that someday.
So you're one of those writers who's always known they wanted to be a writer?
Yeah.
You are.
Do you want the story? I have a story.
How old were you when you wrote your first book, like real book?
Oh boy, like 5. Yeah, I had a lot of surgeries when I was a kid, and the only thing that got me through surgery day was the night before. My dad would go to the library and get a big bag of books, and then he would take me on my lap and tent a blanket around me and read to me. And it was the escape. It was the only way that I could get through it, because back in the day, I'm not going to tell you how old I was, but it was a long time ago. So they didn't have children's hospitals, and they didn't have child life specialists, and they didn't have iPads and all the cool things that distract kids now. So it was just a terrifying experience for me, and I hate it, but it helped.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what book it was, but my dad was reading to me, and he turned the final page over. And I remember thinking, I don't want this to be over. I want to write. I want to know what happens next. So I started writing fan fiction at like 6. And I didn't even know what it was. In fact, I didn't find out what fan fiction was until I was an adult. I was probably in my 30s when somebody said, "Oh, that's fan fiction." I went, "What? I've never even heard of it before."
You're like, I'm so before my time.
Yeah. So I guess I wrote my first piece of fan fiction, when I was like 6. But my mom has all of my stories and my poems, and they're terrible, but wheels, right?
Well, and who was it that said you have to do 10,000 hours of anything before you are an expert at anything? So
Malcolm Gladwell. I love that.
there you go.
Yeah.
And I love how, that the books from an experience that could have been something so scary and so maybe not so positive became a very positive thing in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And sadly, I was not athletic. I'm so clumsy. Sports weren't going to be my thing, even though I really wanted them to be. So books had to be it.
I love it. So you talked before about what what you like to read. So are you reading anything now that I was like last read, current read, next read questions? Do you?
Absolutely. My last read was Leanne Moriarty's Apples Never Fall. I love her. Oh my goodness. She's so smart and she, in my opinion, mines the human experience in a way that few authors can. Like you just get deep into these characters and who they are. And I just love that. Like she's brilliant. And I'm currently reading For the Wolf Fantasy, a retelling of writing. I love retellings. Anything that takes like an old, and maybe that's from my childhood days. Anything that takes an old story or a fairy tale or something and turns it on its head. I just think that's so cool. And as for next, I hope to read, is it The Last Apothecary? Sarah Penner?
Yeah.
That looks so good to me. So it's
Yeah.
on my TBR list. And
Yeah, I've read it. It's good. That's the only one of the three that you mentioned that I've read. It's good.
good.
You'll love it.
And I'll next.
So are you one of those writers who can write more than one book at a time? Or are you one book at a time kind of writer?
That's a great question. So actually writing the book, I can only do one at a time, but I always have the concept for my next one just kind of in my head, like I'm playing with it. And I have all these little notebooks that I carry around in my purse, in my car, on my bedside stand, just else, so that when something hits, I can write it down. And if it doesn't work for the book that I'm currently working on, it's for the next one. So yeah, I have more ideas than I know what to do with, and I know that's
I'm jealous of that. I have lots of ideas, but they're always getting shot down. My publisher keeps them down.
These are your book babies. You can't shoot them down.
I know. That's hard. Do you have problems with that? Like, how's your editor with that?
Oh, my editors change all the time, which is really hard. Yeah, I just when I fall in love, they tend to find another job, which tear.
I've been through that too. Yeah, it's no
that's
fun.
hard. It is because it's a meaningful relationship. Like they're helping you with something that you love so much and have spent so much time on, and they have to understand you really intimately and understand what you're trying to do, and finding that good is the easiest thing. So it's hard switching. It's not my favorite thing, but I have an amazing relationship with my agent, and I had the same agent from the very beginning, and I her completely with absolutely everything. She reads my books usually before they go to my editor, and that's kind of where I start. But I do have several books that I've started that are on my computer and I will never finish. Or I don't know, maybe I will. But I don't know, maybe you've had that too, that you start something and it's just not going where you want it to. So it gets,
Yeah, some stories fizzle, right? As you're writing them, you think, well, okay, this is maybe not what I thought it was going to be, or you get kind of distracted by a bigger, shinier, better idea sometimes.
Yeah. We can be a little cheaty, at least.
But I'm jealous of you having all these ideas and I have little tidbits of ideas, but I don't have like the full story and characters in my head until I actually sit down to come up with the story.
Yeah, maybe I'm overselling it. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I just have like a character and a setting, and I think I want to go there with this. But then, of course, it takes time to massage and research, and I find a lot of my inspiration in real life, like things that are happening around me. So.
Yeah, me too. And I think that's what is so interesting in this genre that we write with it's not like these crazy over the top stories. It's stories of things that could really happen in real life. And I think that's kind of the charm. It's like people like you and me, it could happen to us. And then, when you're the reader, you're thinking, well, gosh, if this happened to me, what would I do? Would I do like Juniper, or would I handle it very differently?
I had to have, I don't know, a moment where I looked at what I was doing with like true crime in particular and asked, is it ethical for me to take somebody else's tragedy, like the worst thing that ever happened to them in their life, and turn it into my entertainment? Like here I sit listening to these true crime podcasts that I'm just fascinated by.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? And even looking at my books, is what I'm doing, is it helpful? Is it beautiful? Is it bringing people to a better place? Or am I being exploitative in some way? And I guess at the end of the day, the way I feel about it is I don't write murder mysteries for the entertainment value. I do it because I believe in that question, why would somebody do this? And then I want so desperately at the end to be able to bring closure to that story
Mm-hmm.
and bring resolution and hope. I hope that every single one of my books ends like on a note of like so beautiful and we belong together. And some of those true crime stories will never have that. It's always so sad to me when it's over and it's just over and there are no answers. So I love writing those answers. It feels like coming full circle.
Right. And giving them maybe not like happily ever after kind of ending, but and like you said, an up note, a positive note. And, Juniper in this story was also a very strong character, and she kind of discovers her own strength as she's going through the story. So I think that is also a very positive twist to the tragic kind of, events in the story.
Thank you. I feel like we all have trauma. We've all dealt with things in our past that stay with us. The body know that we need to find a way to deal with those sorts of things. And it's fun to allow your characters sometimes to do things that you should do yourself.
Right. And to push them to do things that you maybe wouldn't dare to do yourself either, right?
Absolutely. A little bit of going on there.
I love it. Okay, so what is next for you? You were talking about, a bunch of different genres that you were thinking of stories in, but are you working on something right now?
I am. I have a book due in April, and I am just having an absolute blast with this book. It's the story of an Instagram influencer whose daughter goes missing. And I know, it's so fun. I should say that. It's really fun to write, but the whole thing takes place in Minnesota on the North Shore of Lake Superior. And yeah, I'm just completely in love with it. And it's fun to feel that way about a book, to be so, every time I pick up a pen and paper to go, oh, I get to go back to this world with these characters. And
I love it. I'm actually writing a story about an Instagram influencer as well. No daughter who goes missing, no, but yeah.
That's it. Me and you tour next year.
That's right. I love it. Okay, let's see. I think it is it's time for some questions. McKenna has some questions, she says. So how does this work?
I do have questions. Sorry, my screen just went weird. Can you guys see me okay?
Yes.
Okay, give me just 1 second. Somehow it zoomed. There we go. All right. So we do have questions. We're going to start here. You've actually, I think, already kind of touched on this, but it was an early question. So we're going to start with Nicole. Do your book characters talk to you? And if they do, have you had to change something in the book because of it?
Yes, all the time. I wish that they would be and stay in their place, but they absolutely. But that makes the writing process fun. There's always.
How about you, Kimberly?
Yes, they talk to me, and sometimes very loudly. I don't know if I've ever changed anything in the book because of them, but I did have, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, I did have a character in The Marriage Lie who was not in my outline at all, and he walked into the scene, and I was like, who are you? What are you doing here? So I worked him into the story, and he turned out to be a pretty significant character and pretty essential to the story. So yes.
Excellent. Before we get back to the other questions, I forgot what I always do is when I come on to do questions, I like to give our guest moderator a chance to talk about either your most recent work or what you're working on. I know you just said you're working on something with an influencer, but why don't you tell us about your most recent book, if you don't mind?
I'm going to talk about this one, My Darling Husband. It comes out December 28th. So what's that? A month and a half, something like that, almost not quite 2 months. It is the story of a home invasion, a woman who is pulling into her garage with her 2 small kids in the back of the car, and they're, arguing and fighting and whatever. And in all the chaos of getting them out of the car, she doesn't notice the man in the corner of the garage in a mask with a gun, and he forces his way inside and demands a ransom, a really strange, specific number that tells the main character, her name is Jade, that maybe he knows some things about her and her husband. And her husband has to scramble to pull this humongous sum of money together in 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that. So, and it turns out, like I said, that the kidnapper or the home invader might know a little bit more about the family than he is telling.
Sounds great. Okay, so we do have more questions. For both of you, do you have a certain place where you write? And I will say that there's lots of reading recommendation questions. So if you want to cover who your favorite authors are, what you've read recently, we're going to have to get to that at some point. There's numerous varieties of that. So how about we start with you, Kimberly? Do you have a certain place where you write?
I have a bunch of certain places where I write. I kind of like to move around. I have, an office. It's not really an office with a desk. It's more like loungy kind of furniture, a couch and some chairs that I can put my feet up on. I like to write with my laptop on my lap. So I choose couches over a table any day, but I do bounce around. And if it's nice weather, I'll sit outside on the patio. We have a covered area. So I like to move around. That's kind of like every time I get stuck, I pick up my laptop and I just move to another seat. And that kind of tends to work for me. So
that's great. How about you, Nicole?
I'm very similar. I like to move around. I always start in my back room where I can pull that door shut and get my pen and paper out. But if I find myself stuck, change of scenery makes all the difference in the world.
Right? Isn't that weird?
Isn't that crazy? I know. Sometimes my favorite thing to do is to go to the local coffee shop and put my headphones on so people know I'm working and write there, because I don't know, it makes all the difference in the world to just mix things up a bit.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and off book this. Favorite authors. Like, who do you not miss a book by? Let's stay with you for a second, Nicole.
Okay. Definitely Kent Kruger. Everything that man writes, I will devour. I love him so much. And I already talked about her, but I love Leanne Moriarty. I've never missed a Kimberly Belle book. I think she's fantastic. And yeah, Jocelyn Jackson. I love her. There's just so many. I'm an eclectic reader and an enthusiastic reader.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
It's hard for me to read a book I don't like.
Oh, yeah. How about you, Kimberly?
So I just read the new one. I'm not sure it's actually out yet, but Sally Hepworth. Do you guys know her? She's Australian. The Younger Wife, I think it's called. And she made me, with that book, a fan for life. So she's one of my auto buys. Lisa Unger is another. She's fabulous. She just came out with
Last Girl Ghosted.
That one. Yeah. She's great. Mary Kubica is another. I'll just read anything she puts out. I could go on and on, but I'd have to actually look at my Goodreads pile to see because I read so much and so many.
All right. What do your kids think of you being a writer, Nicole?
Oh man, they kind of don't care. I have been writing since my oldest was 18 months old. So they could just kind of grew up with it. It's not really a big deal to them. And my oldest now is 19. So I have 19, 18, 15, 14, and 11. And they have never read my books, not one of them.
Wow.
So, and I don't know if they will. I like their readers, but yeah.
Fine. Maybe they just need that separation. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
weird to read. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe when they grow up, that'll change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So for both of you, if you could be a part of any story, past or present, which book would it be? It's a hard question. So if one of you has an answer, go ahead and just jump in.
It's actually an easy one for me, and I feel like a teenager saying it, but it's Harry Potter. Like, who doesn't want to I would love to go to Harry Potter World in Florida and the whole 9 yards. I'm such a kid when it comes to that.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, the first one that came to my mind was Outlander. I love those first two books, but that would actually be really scary because they were a lot of fighting and no showers, and how do they brush their teeth? And
Yeah.
but it would be fascinating to be able to like move back in time and experience it. And Jamie, I mean, who doesn't want to meet Jamie?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You would take all the fun elements of it and not the no showering.
Exactly. Exactly.
Lack of all women's rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I feel you on that one. Okay. So Susan was wondering, is it hard to write children into stories which have sort of a scary aspect to them? And I'm sure both of you can touch on this. Let's start with you, Nicole.
Yeah, it's really hard. I can't stand the thought of anything happening to a child. I think of something happening to my own kids and it makes me sick to my stomach. But I do like going there because the reality is that does happen. And I try to end it in such a way that I don't think I could ever like kill a child or have something horrific happen to them in my books. I don't think that I could do that. But to put them in scary situations and allow them to be saved feels okay to me, feels redemptive. And the truth is our world can be a scary place. So
Yeah, agreed.
How about you, Kimberly? Same?
So yeah, my kids are older. They're big and grown and out of the house. So it's easier for me to write stories like My Darling Husband. I wrote 3 Days Missing about a kid who goes missing. It's easier for me to put some distance between my situation and the story, I guess. But I do, when I incorporate kids in my stories, I do make sure that they have some sort of, they're kind of little badasses in some way. And so they kind of, they always do something that is maybe a little could be a little dangerous, but it's because they're so brave. So I do like to give them a little bit of that power in the story. And like Nicole said, I mean, I don't know that I could ever write a story where there's not a happy ending for the child. Like the kids in my stories are not going to die. You can go into them knowing that.
So I didn't ask earlier because I just wasn't sure. But so you have children as well. They're grown. Have they? How do they feel about you being a writer? Do they read your books?
They do read them, but only once they got to an age where, it wasn't embarrassing to be proud of their mom. So, and the funny thing is too, they refuse to read it on any sort of e-reader or like their computer or whatever. When I have very early, just a digital copy, they're like, nope, we don't want to read it until we have a real book in our hands. So
Interesting.
I don't know what that says about their generation or just my kids, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, they do read it now.
Yeah, I think generationally speaking, actually, that's they're not as their kids are so much on laptops and things nowadays that when they want to read a book, we find that we have a lot of teenagers or younger readers who want a physical book because they're always on devices,
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have one very specific question. Nikki, has your husband read your books?
Yeah. Yeah, he has. He's read them all. He's read early versions of them. He's my biggest fan. That's kind of his joke.
That's
He
great.
says he is, which is probably it's the right thing to say.
That's perfect. And then for both of you, where do you get your character names from? And why don't we start with you, Kimberly?
I keep kind of a running list on my phone or in a notebook of names that I run across that I like, that speak to me. But really, it's kind of a gut thing. When I'm writing a book, like I'll go in sometimes thinking my main character's name is going to be this, and as I'm going into the story, it doesn't quite fit. And so I'll change her name to something else, and it's like, boom, there she is. So it's really just a gut thing. It has to feel right for me. And if it doesn't, I can't quite get a grip on her or him.
Yeah. How about you, Nicole?
I agree with Kimberly 100%. It is a gut thing. And there are times that my characters pick names that I don't even like, but that's the name for them. I have to write it because it fits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something kind of magical about it. It's interesting.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've made it through all the questions. You guys had a great chat. It was lovely to listen to. Congratulations, Nicole, on the new book, and looking forward to your new book coming in December, Kimberly. Thanks to everyone for watching. I'm going to go ahead and sign us off for the evening. As always, the links in the comments if you're so inclined to order books. But thank you both for being here this evening.
Thank you. It was so great.
I'm going to end our show right now. Have a great night.